Hey, it's Form Check Friday. Thanks for joining me. Let's get into it. Hey, it's Form Check Friday. I'm Paul. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for submitting all of your videos this week. We have a great batch, it seems like. And we also have a new addition to the show, episode, if you want to call it that. We are doing a unsolicited fitness celebrity form check. So we're going to scour the internet and we're going to find fitness influencers, celebrities, whatever, and we're going to dig into their form and see if we can break it down, maybe help them out a little bit. So that'll be later in the episode. Right now, let's get into your form checks. As you guys know, and for those of you joining for the first time, I haven't seen these. So this is all, we are going to do this together and it's always fun. So let's get into it. All right, here's a follow-up after working on better hip drive out of the hole rather than a slight pause. So this is someone who has posted previously. We gave them some tips. Hopefully they went and addressed those issues, and now we're going to do a little follow-up. The bar did move up on the back, move up the back a bit on the right side on the fourth rep. Okay. With the shoulder asymmetry, I just have to grip the bar harder when getting the bar into place. Not sure if the bar was moving from fatigue or not getting low enough on the right side. This was the third set of 280 for 3 sets of 5. Okay, great. So I think I remember this guy had some shoulder asymmetry where we had to pull one hand in a little bit closer than the other one. That's okay. All of us have asymmetries, and especially with shoulder flexibility. As long as the barbell is balanced, we're good to go. So let's dive into the squat and see what it looks like. All right, so as you guys know, I usually watch a couple of these reps, just get a feel for it, and then we'll start talking about it. Bar looks like it's in the right place. You can see he's got some tape around the bar. That's usually because he probably bought a bar that didn't have center knurling. That became really popular during the CrossFit craze. They were doing a lot of Olympic lifting, and so they, a lot of times with cleans and snatches, the knurling on the bar can chafe. So they started making a bunch of bars that don't have center knurl. Ironically, in competitive Olympic weightlifting, the bars have to have center knurl. So if you're in the market for a bar, make sure that you buy one that has center knurling. It helps keep the bar in place on your back and doesn't allow it to slide down so much. So if you've already done that and you mistakenly bought a bar with no center knurl, you can wrap it up with hockey tape or something like that, and that kind of helps. But there's your little PSA, center knurl. All right, these look good. There's a little bit of an issue with your depth, and I think it's a byproduct of your stance. We'll talk about that, but the hip drive looks great. The upper back looks good. So you can see if we watch your wrists, you're going to see them kind of, set's over. All right, let's go back. Let's pay attention. We'll work from the top down on this one. So if you watch your wrists, you're going to see it kind of roll back. Not so much on that one, but you can see they're kind of bent like this. That one, we're rolling back. So if you're feeling the bar move as you come back up in the rep, that's usually the cause. So if you go down in the squat and allow your wrist to roll back, the natural correction on the way up is to try and roll it back up to where it was. And you may not even be thinking about that. It just sort of happens. So bar rolls back, and then on the way up, you sort of lift your elbow and try and put it back up on your back. And that's what's going to cause that feeling of the bar rolling. It could also be from losing your upper back position. And those two things can be linked together. Bar rolls back on the way down, and on the way up, you push it up, and then you round your upper back, and you're going to feel it kind of move around. So the fix for this is to try and get your grip perfect and tight and locked in. And the way you're going to do that, if you look at your wrist right here, you can see that it's bent kind of back like this, and you've also got this kink right here. And the reason is, I'm guessing, when you set your grip up, you tried to keep your knuckles parallel to the bar, right? So if this is our barbell, you put your hand on like this and you close your hand, which is the natural inclination. So, that's how we grip things usually. The problem with that is if you grip with the knuckle straight across, when your elbow has to move in, because you kind of hold the bar like this, right? Your knuckles are straight, but you have to have this little kink in your wrist. So the solution is do this, right? So when you set your grip up, you establish the right width or the correct width that you want with your hand flat. And then before you grab it, you just turn your palm like this. Okay, so not like this, right? Full palm in contact with the bar. And then you just rotate it and you'll feel it kind of fall into this little groove in your hand right here. There's a little divot in your hand and the bar will just kind of click into that. Once you feel that, you just rest your fingers. You press your fingertips into the bar. You'll notice the knuckle points up at about a 45-degree angle. And then when we're holding the bar straight, we've got the wrist perfectly straight like that. There's no kink in the wrist right here, right? So we're here, now we're perfectly straight. Looks like this from the front, okay? Hey buddy, doing some form checks right now, okay? Can you just go chill out? All right, no, hey, off. Okay. Clint wants to help today. It was raining, so we didn't get to go out for as long as we normally do. Okay, so you set your hand like this, turn, squeeze, and then when you go under the bar, the wrist will be perfectly straight like that. On your back, what's keeping the bar in place is the palm trapping the bar on the posterior deltoid right here. And so one of the ways that you can feel the correct involvement of the upper body, or the hands and the elbows and the wrists on the squat, which is very minimal, is to take out the empty bar, wedge your hands in, right? And then before you go down, open your palms up like that. Open your fingers. And then do a set of 5. And you'll find that you can squat perfectly with your palms wide open, because the only job of the hands and the arms is to trap the bar with pressure, right? To wedge it against the posterior deltoid. This is unnecessary and it's going to cause a bunch of form errors, right? So we don't want to use any of this, right? All it is, the grip is tight in that you're wedging the hands together, right? And creating a bunch of pressure that keeps that bar in place. But that's it. There's no need to white knuckle it or roll your wrist back or use your elbows. All of that is going to cause the bar to move around, and we don't want that. So practice with an empty bar. Just get your grip set, right? Again, wrist straight, right? Not like this, not this kink in your hand. Perfectly straight. Open your hands, do a set of 5, and you'll just feel that the bar stays perfectly in place. And then when you move to your heavy weight, all you do is rest your fingertips against the bar, just for some extra security. But you really shouldn't have to, because what's trapping that bar is the palm and the tightness of the grip and the narrowness of the grip and that pressure and tension that it creates to secure the bar in place, okay? So that will help with the whole rolling around thing, right? You just think that nothing, I've said this before, nothing from the top of your head to your hip moves in the squat, except that whole segment just leans over. It goes from vertical to more horizontal, right? I'm here and I'm just leaning over, but I'm not losing my tightness. I'm not moving my head around. I'm not messing around with my elbows. I'm not rolling my wrists. Perfectly static. And then just at the hip joint, you lean over and you come back up. If you do that, your upper body will be locked in and you won't have any unnecessary movement. Okay, so let's address your depth. So we'll just check the hip drive here. Very good. Hanging onto the back angle, not lifting the chest too early. Head position looks good. Yeah. Good. Now let's look at your depth. Okay. So, and we're going to fix it. This is a very easy fix because it's just a matter of adjusting your form. So let me see if I can catch the bottom. Okay. So that's where you think the bottom is. And we're down here like this. Okay. So I want a very slight decline position, right? So if this is your hip crease right here, we just need it to break below the top of the kneecap a little bit. And let me see if I can scrub this to your actual, I'll try again. See if I can catch the bottom again on a deeper one. Yeah, you're way down there, okay? You're like this, and I just need this. I just need, again, if I put a marble on your thigh, I need it to roll back to your hip. not towards your knee, but you're down here like that. And the reason is that your stance is too narrow, I suspect, right? So I think if you just move your stance 2 inches wider apart, it will bring the tightness in the bottom up a little higher, right? The limit of the groin muscle's ability to stretch out with a narrow stance is going to be you're going to be able to travel further down before those rubber bands tighten up. If you widen your stance, those rubber bands will tighten up higher in the rep, and you'll get that natural stretch reflex and that feeling that you're at the bottom simply by widening your stance. And again, those rubber bands will stretch out to their max a little bit in the correct bottom position, right? So this is a little too deep, but that's a real easy fix. Widen it a little bit, fix your wrists. The rest of it looks fantastic. And yeah, keep going. Nice work correcting the pause errors. And by widening your stance and getting a little bit more of a stretch higher up in the rep, you're also going to be able to get a little bit more pop out of the bottom, which will help you in the long run. So thank you for your submissions and for listening and correcting it. It looks good. So hopefully we can keep going. All right, let's move on. Hey, Paul, really enjoying your style of coaching and your generosity in sharing your knowledge. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Here's my squat at 240, 6 months of the novice linear progression, and things are really slowing down. Yeah. I mean, 6 months of a novice linear progression is a good run. You know, a lot of times that burns out around month 3 or 4. So you've been doing good. Let's see. I do struggle to stabilize my lower half in all 4 main exercises. Now, a squat at 240 for 6 months of training is a little suspect. That's not very heavy. You know, if you're going up even conservatively 5 pounds 3 times a week, right? That's like 60 pounds a month on your squat. So if you're only at 240 with half a year of training, maybe there was some injury, maybe there was a reset or something like that, but we'll take a look. But 6 months in, you should be into the 300s at least. Okay. Let's take a look. Bar position looks good. Now we got a big red flag here. Okay. Weightlifting shoes. So I'm going to give you the elevator pitch on weightlifting shoes. You need weightlifting shoes. It's the first thing that I make all my clients buy. You need a belt too. That'll help a lot. But the first thing is weightlifting shoes before the belt. And the reason is that weightlifting shoes increase the efficiency of the lift through stability. So they are completely flat across the surface of the foot. You could see that your running shoes have a little bit of a arch to them, and there's a shape, and that's because when you're running, you're trying to rock your foot. But in weightlifting, we want to be bolted to the floor, right? So they're completely flat. They have a non-compressible sole, meaning that the sole is made traditionally it was wood. Then nowadays you'll find molded plastic or really, really dense rubber, like really hard rubber. And the idea is you don't want to do a squat on a mattress, right? Imagine trying to squat 240 standing on your bed. You're going to be wobbling all over the place. And it means your brain has to not only think about moving the weight, it also has to think about, am I going to fall over? It's stabilizing your foot. And we want to take as many of those ancillary things that you have to think about off the table so that you can just focus on moving the weight. So we want stability. Now, the other thing that weightlifting shoes have is a heel, an elevated heel, and that helps with ankle mobility. So a lot of times it makes it easier to get to the bottom of the squat, right? You lift the heel up a little bit, you get a little bit more range of motion in the ankles, makes hitting depth a little bit easier. And structurally, the weightlifting shoe has a cup, like a rigid cup built into the heel. You can't see it, but you can feel it. It's a plastic cup that the heel sits in, and then you have a strap across the metatarsal that locks the foot in. And so if we watch you squat, I bet if I could put a camera on the floor behind your feet, like straight back, I bet we would see your feet roll out onto the sides of your shoes because you have a soft upper part of that shoe, and it's offering zero support. And so as you start to push, your feet are going to roll out onto the sides, right? And it's going to mess with your balance a lot. So all of those things together mean a better transfer of force, right? You're pushing against the ground. So you don't want any of the force that you're working so hard to generate to get lost in a rubbery, squishy sole, because it's absorbing some of that force. You want all of that force to go to the bar. So weightlifting shoes correct a ton of form errors. I've had people, like real difficult cases where you just put them in weightlifting shoes and everything magically gets better. You can spend $50, you can spend $300. Doesn't matter. You're not going to know the difference. When you can squat 500 pounds for reps, you can have an opinion on different heel heights, whatever. In the meantime, just get a pair from one of the big brands, Nike, Reebok, Adidas, or Rogue makes their own weightlifting shoe that's pretty good. Any of the major brands will be fine. And again, you can sometimes find like Adidas ones for like $50 when they're on sale. Don't get any type of hybrid, like a CrossFit hybrid version where it's like a weightlifting shoe, but it's also like a cross trainer. Garbage. You want a dedicated weightlifting shoe. You only wear them in the gym. They'll last your whole life. Totally worth it. And then get a belt. And that's a different discussion. All right, so that rant over on the shoes. Let's get into your lifting. The upper body looks good. The bar's in the right place. Let's see how the lift goes. Okay. All right, so let's deal with the start position first, okay? We got a problem here. And that is, you got soft, unlocked knees, and you've got soft, unlocked hips, okay? We want the knee and the hip joint locked at the top of the rep, because that is where you are stable. And it's also, when you lock out a rep, that means you are not adding unnecessary stress and fatigue to the muscles that you're about to use in the lift. Okay, so imagine I'm bench pressing, right? And I come down and I come up and I just stop here, right? Well, now while I get ready for the next rep, I'm just burning out all this muscle here because it's still working. Now, if I lock my elbows out, then the joint supports the weight and those muscles can take a little bit of a break while I get ready for the next rep. So lockout is your safe space. It's your home. You need to know that if I can just get back to lockout, I can recompose. I can take a moment. I can say a prayer for the next rep. I can get psyched up. But if you get almost to lockout, but keep the joints flexed, right, then you're still taxing those muscles. They don't get a break. And this is really going to matter down the line when, if you're squatting 450 for a set of 5, man, between reps 4 and 5, you need to know, you might need a few breaths in there to get psyched up for that last one. And if every rep before that, you never fully lock out and you just burn a little bit of juice from one rep to the next, then you're not going to have that later when you need it for the last rep. So every rep at the top, knees are locked, hips are, as locked as they can be. With the bar, you're going to be have a little bit of a lean, but definitely you want the knees locked out every rep so that you can take that little break and recompose yourself and feel comfortable. Like, one of the things that it takes a while to learn is that, like, lifting heavy weight is mentally exhausting too. It's not just physically exhausting. And you need to be comfortable standing there holding a bunch of weight on your back and not freaking out, right? Just to know that, hey, if I get to lockout, I'm good. I can, it's almost like it's not 5 reps. It's 5. It's not a set of 5. It's 5 individual reps. Each rep gets its own focus and treatment. And in between those reps, when you're locked out, that's where you have a moment to reset the start position, refocus, get psyched up again, and then go into the next rep. And if you never lock out, you're just kind of rushing from one rep to the next because your muscles are getting tired the longer you stand there. So get used to just standing there with weight on your back and not freaking out, and learn that skill now so that you have it when it gets real heavy, right? And you really need that time in between reps to get ready for the next one. Okay, so lock the knees, stand up straight. Moving on, let's see how we do with the actual squat. Wrists look great, leaning over well. Good hip drive. You're lifting your chest a little early, meaning getting out of your hips. You know, I want you to hang on to that back angle a little bit longer. So if this is your back angle here, right, which is beautiful, and you're starting to lift it up kind of, well, that was a bad line. Right, so here's your back angle. You're starting to lift it here. I want you to wait till you get about here to lift it up, if that makes sense. You're doing a great job leaning over. You're doing a great job out of the bottom, right? The hips, you drive the hips up a little bit. The shoulders catch up. But I want you to take it up a little higher before you start lifting your chest, because that means you have longer, you'll be spending more time driving the hips up. As soon as the chest lifts, the hip drive stops. And that's where your power is, in the hips. So you want as much power as high up into the rep as you can get. If you go to the bottom and do a little, you drive your hips and then immediately start lifting your chest, now the whole thing's gotten a lot harder, right? Because you don't have the hip drive to help you. So you want to hang on to that as long as you can. So what I always tell people is, from the top, lean over right away and stay leaned over as long as you can, right? You want to start standing up at the point where you leaned over in the first place. So if you're here at the top and you lean over, you take it all the way down, you pull it all the way back up, hang on to that back angle. And then as you get back to where you leaned over, then you finish the rep by standing up. So just try and stay leaned over a little bit longer than you want to, and you'll find that the reps are smoother and faster that way. Okay, let's see what we got here for the rest of it. Yeah, that one you actually hung on to your back angle pretty well. All right, so that rep was a little high. Overall, these are great. I mean, there's some minor issues, little things we can fix, but it's a solid squat. Let's see if we can dial in your depth a little bit. Yeah, you're kissing depth, okay? So I'll see if I can grab one. I can pause it right at the bottom. And yeah, I mean, you're like right at parallel. And if you really want to tap into that rebound and use that stretch reflex, you need to go a little bit lower, maybe like inch or two lower, to finish the stretch of the groin muscles of the adductors and really get that bounce. And so what I'm suspecting is that the bounce is going to be it's not going to be very dynamic. So if we watch you go down, it's all the same speed, right? If we watch your butt and then you come back up. And what we want in that, yeah, so you're going down and then you're coming back up, and it's all sort of the same cadence. It should speed up right at the bottom. The point from when you're about 2 inches above the bottom, down into the stretch reflex, and then out of the bottom, that segment should be faster than the rest of the descent, okay? Because you need some speed going into the bottom to use that stretch reflex, to finish letting those muscles stretch out and then getting that spring that shoots you out of the bottom. So you want to think slow and controlled on the way down, like good cadence on the way down, and then right above the bottom, you just let it, you're going to use that stretch reflex. So it's slow, 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 bounce, and then explode up. Okay? So you got to let it go a little bit and commit to sinking into that final bottom position, which is a little bit deeper than you're turning it around. Feel that rebound and then rocket it up as hard as you can. One of the things you can do to feel that is just take the empty bar out of the rack, go down to the bottom position, shove your knees out, sit down there in the correct bottom position, balanced, and then just with your knees shoved out, just kind of bounce up and down, like pretend your butt's like a basketball. And you'll feel the stretch reflex in there. Don't come all the way back up. Just sit there and kind of bounce it a few times and try and catch that rhythm, and then go all the way to the top. I do this still to this day when I squat. I go down from my empty bar sets and I just sit down there and kind of bounce around so that I get reminded of that dynamic feeling of the stretch reflex. So get a little bit more aggressive with that. Let yourself sink down a little bit lower and a little bit faster, and then try and catch it on the way up and use that to sort of rocket you to the top. Stay leaned over a little bit longer, get some weightlifting shoes, lock your knees out, you'll be good to go. Okay. And then, you know, we'll talk about programming or something, because we got to get you up to 315 ASAP. All right. Thank you for submitting. Appreciate it. Some cool things to talk about, and let's keep going. Paul, I'd appreciate a form check on my squats. Here's a YouTube link. I feel as though I may be descending too slowly. I'm working on keeping my knees out. This is 110 kilograms for 5. This is 85% of my video Tuesday. Okay. 37 years old, 5'1", and 207 pounds. Okay. Let's take a look at it. Are you 5'1"? Maybe you meant 6'1". You don't look 5'1" to me. Okay. So first things first, the bar's too high up on your back. You've got it sort of in between the high bar position and the low bar position. So let me see if I can do a little line. You've got it kind of right here, right? And can I make this line smaller? I'll go green. Yeah, let me see. And then I want it right down here. So you need to move it about 2 inches, an inch or two lower on your back. You'll feel there's if you see this little divot kind of back here in my posterior deltoid, it kind of sits back there. If you look up, on the Starting Strength website, they have some good photos of where the bar goes. There's a video, and you can see, but for you, it needs to be a little bit lower on your back. And in order to do that, you're going to have to widen your grip a little bit, because you're real tucked in and your wrists are bent. So if you widen your grip a little bit, that'll give you a little bit more range of motion to lower the bar on your back. So play around with it, but it does need to be a little bit lower. And that will, in this position, we're going to see some errors just because you have the bar in the wrong place. So let's take a look, see the rest of it. Stance wise, this looks very narrow. Your feet look like they're only about, a couple, maybe like a foot apart between the heels. You want shoulder width between the heels to start, unless, there's some thing we need to correct, or you have a flexibility issue. But I would think that this is probably going to be a little too narrow for you. So I would try widening your stance just a little bit. Think heels directly under the shoulders. Okay, so we'll talk about hip drive first. So if we're watching your hips, there's not much. Okay, and part of the reason is you're not getting all the way to the bottom. So if you look at, let me see if I can demo or show you what I'm looking at. So if we look at your hips and your shoulders, in other words, I'm watching here and I'm watching here. Let me go back to red. Those 2 points, right? And out of the bottom, I want to see this move first. Okay, butt moves up first. And what we're going to see is this and this move up perfectly at the same time. Okay, which means not much hip drive. If hip drive's done properly, I'll see the butt move first and then the shoulders catch up behind it. So, but this is all stemming from one. Yeah, so you're just too perfect here, right? And which means you're not getting the boost from driving your butt up. You're just keeping everything, like you're doing a good job of preserving the back angle, which is right, but you're missing that initial burst of energy with the hip drive. So all of this is stemming from the bar being too high on your back, because when you lower the bar, you will naturally lean over more, and that'll give you more access to your hips. You'll be less vertical, right? So just putting the bar down lower will fix it. The other thing is your knees, okay? So if we watch your knees here, see if I can pause this. So right here, you're about halfway down, let's say, okay? And if we look at your knee position and we see how much of the stripes in your pants we can see relative to this post. Okay? By this point in the rep, we're calling it the halfway point, your knees should be as far forward as they're going to be at the bottom of the squat. You should have set them, you should have put them in the same position that they'll be in at the bottom of the squat by the time you're halfway down. Meaning that if I push play, I should not see your knee slide forward more. I should not see any more space between these white lines on your pants and this post. And if I hit play and you keep your eyes down there on your knee, we're going to see a lot more material in your pants as you as you slide into the bottom. See that? So now we can see all this black, right? Because your knee has now slid here on the way down instead of stopping kind of like right there. And this is the classic thing that I talk about every week, which is knee slide, which is one of the main problems with the squat. And what that means is that, so the short version, because a lot of people have heard this before, so the short version is, again, you need to put the knee where it's going to be at the bottom as soon as you can. So from the top of the rep, you lean over and you shove your knees not only out, but forward and out. Okay? So they go out as wide as you can and forward to the point that they're going to end up at the bottom, to this point right here where they are right now. They need to be there by the time you're halfway, right? So if they need to be here and you only put them here, because that point at the bottom where they are, where they want to go, is balance, right? And so if they need to be here, but you only put them here, right? By the halfway point, as you get lower into the rep, they have to go here. They have to, or you're going to fall. Right? So what happens at the bottom is, instead of sitting back and stretching out the muscles of your posterior chain, reaching back with the hips, getting that nice bounce where that hip drive comes from, you can't do that because your knee has to slide forward, and that pulls the rest of you forward with it. So if we want the correct descent is lean over, shove the knees forward, right? So the first half is knees forward and out. The second half is, now that the knee is where it needs to be, the second half is hips reaching back. Knees forward and out, hips back and down. Knees forward and out, hips back and down. That's how you stretch out that adductor muscle, right? So my analogy for this is always a slingshot. If I have a slingshot and I want to shoot it, I need to stretch that rubber band out, right? So the first thing I have to do is shove my arm out, right? If I push my arm forward and lock it, now I can pull that rubber band back off my arm, right? So when you lean over and shove your knees out, that's what you're doing. You're putting your knee forward and then leaving it there. And then as you switch to reaching back with the hips are like that pouch, right? On the slingshot, you're pulling back and the adductor muscles are that rubber band. So you're reaching back and you get that nice stretch. That's how you get the stretch reflex. But if you just put your arm out here, right? You don't lock it forward. As you go to the bottom, it slides forward. Now the pouch is going this way. So you're moving like this, which means we're not stretching. You're getting pulled towards the wall. Okay. And that's why you can't actually hit proper depth. Even though it feels like you're getting deeper, the bar is technically getting lower, but you're collapsing forward. And what never happens is that your hip crease right here is never going to drop below the top of your kneecap, right? It's always, even though you're getting lower, you're never getting the hips dropping down, stretching and rebounding, because the angle is just going to stay like this and get pulled forward. So it feels like you're going deeper, right? And technically that you are going lower, but you're never actually hitting depth because the hip crease is never dropping below the kneecap. All right, long-winded explanation. There's a video on my YouTube channel called Let's Get to the Bottom of Your Squat, where I go into more detail about this. But the solution to this is you have to get your knee forward faster, further forward faster, leave it there, and then spend the second half of the rep reaching back with the hips and stretching out those adductors, feeling that bounce, and then driving up, okay? So I'm gonna do one more run through just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Those are the big ones though. And this is gonna affect your hip drive, your ability to do hip drive, your ability to hip depth. Yeah, you can see your whole body moving towards the wall because the knees are pulling the system forward because you didn't put them far enough forward. Okay, and that one you didn't hit depth. The reason you're capable of hitting depth, it's just that you've got the order of the descent wrong. So the speed is fine. Okay, and on that one you kind of lifted your chin a little bit. This is all a byproduct of bar position and then the knees and the knee slide. So just to recap, move the bar down lower on your back, widen your stance, keep your eyes on the floor, lean over, knees further forward and out right away. So by the time that you're at the halfway point, your knees are done moving forward. They cannot travel any further forward because they are where they need to be. And then for the second half of the descent, with the knee here, you're gonna switch to sitting back, right? Knees forward and out, hips back and down, hips reach back and down. Then you're gonna sit into that nice stretch reflex, really focus on popping the hips up first, stay leaned over on the way up, good to go, okay? Work on that stuff, check out that video. Let's get to the bottom of your squat. If I remember, I'll link to it. I almost never remember, but it's on the same YouTube channel. So check that out, fix it, post another video, and we'll take a look. Thanks for submitting, good luck, and let's move onward. Okay, follow up on, we got Dick here again. Okay, follow up on the deadlift after your last form check of my deadlift. Tried to keep the weight more balanced over the midfoot. Breathe, squeeze, pause, pull. 335 pounds, 240 body weight, 41 years old, recently finished SSNLP, started intermediate program. Thanks for your time. Okay, let's take a look. Okay. All right. Shins to the bar. Squeeze the chest up. Okay. Those look like very tiny plates. Are those 45s? They look very, unless this is an optical illusion or something, they look very small or in diameter. Okay, so head position, again, we want you looking at the ground. So as you get to the top, you start looking out here in space. Your chin is all the way up at the top. So just keep looking at the floor. All right, let's go back and see what we got. I mean, I'm assuming that those are 45s, but they look, this camera angle or something makes them look like they're smaller diameter. If they are, for some reason, like 35s or something, it's going to change the whole movement pattern of the deadlift because the bar is going to be, it won't be at mid shin, it'll be too low. So you have to use 45s or bumper plates that are, you know, the same width as a 45-pound plate. All right, so we'll get into the movement here. Shins to the bar. So from here, squeeze the chest up. Hips are dropping a little bit. It's not egregious. Okay. Good. Now we got to reset. Hips are high. Now see, you got too much weight on your heels. Okay, so you may have overcorrected this. Let me see if I can pause it in just the right. So if you kind of see how you're back here like this. So you've shifted back, and we had a guy, I think it was Miguel last week, that kind of had the same thing where you're too far, you've rocked too far back. You've got too much weight on your heels. So you need to be a little bit, take this whole system and move it this way just a little bit, right? So don't change the angle. Don't drop your butt or stick your butt up any higher. but you need to shift a little bit more weight back towards the toes. Because I think if I told you to get off your toes last time, you've overcorrected. And now the bar is moving up like this. So get back over it a little bit more. Put a little bit more weight on the toes so that that bar, instead of moving up at an angle like this, can move straight up like that. Okay? So let's go back and keep watching. Yeah. That was pretty good. I mean, these look decent. Let's see how well your back. This could be better. This you know, setting your back here, it looks pretty round. So what we want to do is get this lumbar spine to look more like that. Look more like a U, okay? So let me see if you tighten it up before I give you more shit for it. Squeeze the chest up. Well, yeah, you're setting it a little bit. You could squeeze it up a little more. So, yeah, it's just getting a little bit worse. So, let me show you one of the drills that I use for, and I'll see if I can do this in my little window here. So one of the exercises that I use to help guys feel the arch in the back is to, all right, so you're here, right? You're going to get in your deadlift stance. Okay. Same thing. You're going to bend your knees a little bit, and you're going to, with straight arms, you're going to put your hands below your kneecaps right here like this. Okay. So straight arms, not bent, like this. And you see how round my back is? I'm going to push against my shins, and I'm going to use the resistance against my shins to rotate my chest up, and you'll see my back go from round to flat, round to flat. I'm pushing against the knees to help me squeeze up like that. My nipples are pointed down. I'm trying to rotate them up towards the wall. Okay, I'm not dropping my butt. I'm just here, squeeze and relax, squeeze and relax, okay? And just do that a bunch of times, right? So you can start to feel the sensation for this. It's not just the upper back, right? It's all the way down to the lower back, okay? And then the only difference between that exercise and the deadlift is, instead of pushing here, I'm gonna go a little bit lower, but I'm gonna push the barbell against my shins. So here I'm just pushing my hands against my shins and using that resistance to flatten my back. With the barbell, it's the same concept. I just push the barbell against my shins and use that resistance to help. Okay, so practice that and just get the feeling for you want to feel the sensation of what it feels like when you turn on those muscles that control your low back. So do a bunch of reps of that, see if you can get the feel for it, because you need to get the back a little bit flatter. And this is a tough nut to crack. It's a hard one especially to coach remotely. But once you feel it, once you get the sensation for what you have to think about to activate the muscles that control your low back, then you'll be able to do it with the deadlift. So, so aside from that one, I guess we'll just take one more look here, see if we catch anything. Let's go. Let's go. You got to speed this up, because again, you're wasting a lot of time just being down there. That was better. That was better. Okay. Just flatten the back and go. Yeah. Yeah. So see, the problem with, yeah, you're wasting way too much time down there. And the problem with having too much weight on your heels, in your case, it looks like it looks like you've got your hips up even too high, because when you set it down, it seems like you're setting it down behind the middle of your foot with the hips too high up. And if the hips are too high up, right, and the bar, most of the errors happen when people put the bar too far forward, but sometimes, every once in a while, you get a guy who puts the bar behind the middle of the foot. And in order to do that, the hamstrings need to be really stretched out. The butt needs to be like really high up in the air. And because in that position, the quads don't really play much. You don't have much leg drive off the ground because you've already extended the knees so much by having the hips that high, right? So all of the work is going to be done by the low back because the quads don't have a chance to help because the knees have already extended. So you want to make sure that I don't want to say to squat your deadlift because that's the wrong thing to do. But if the legs are too straight, you're not going to get much hip. So what I would say is you should probably try and lower your hips just a little bit more. So make sure that you've got a little bit more weight forward because you seem to have overcorrected that onto the heels. So let's think about balance over the midfoot, pressure on the toes, pressure on the heels. Get a little bit more weight on the toes. Okay. Don't push the hips up so high. Just bring it down into a little bit more of a squat, right? By doing that, you're also, in addition to allowing you to use more quad off the floor, it's also going to slack the hamstrings a little bit and give you more room in the hamstrings to work on getting that back nice and flat. Okay. So work on those three things. And again, if those aren't 45-pound plates and they're smaller in diameter, that's a huge problem because just by raising the bar up a couple inches to the proper position, it's going to change. It's going to create a more efficient pulling start position. So if those are smaller than a 45, which again, like this might be a camera trick, but that'll fix a lot just by putting the correct diameter plates on the bar. If they are, ignore me. But anyway, work on those three things. Weight a little bit more forward, hips not quite so high, and then really focusing on squeezing the chest up, getting that back nice and flat. And you should be good to go. Make sure you're looking down at the ground the whole time. And and then speed it up. Don't overthink this. Just go in with an idea of what you need to do and try and get the bar off the ground in a reasonably short amount of time. Don't get sloppy, but the longer you sit down there and think about what you're supposed to be doing, the more tired you're going to get, the more psyched out you're going to get. You're being very deliberate with this and methodical, which is okay, but you're going to do better by just go. Give it your best shot, evaluate what happened on that rep, fix it on the next one, and you'll be good. Okay? Work on that stuff, post up another one in a week or two, and we'll take another look. Thank you, sir. Moving on. Miguel, okay. Hi, Paul. If you have time, this is my first squat double from yesterday. These are squat doubles on 4-day Texas methods. Squats are getting hard. Thanks a lot. All right, edit. I'm rotating reps on intensity. Days with squats. 1 week 5, the next week's 3 doubles or 5 singles like yesterday. Okay, that's a legit approach to doing it. We watched Miguel's deadlift. Miguel had the same issue with being back on the heels too much last time. So now we get to see his squats. All right, let's do a little analysis here. So bar position, good. Stance looks good. He's got his belt on. Let's see. We'll see what it looks like. Head down. Tight. Got a little knee cave there, but we're doing some heavy weight. Okay, so we can break this down pretty quickly. Watch. So this is another good thing that you don't really see, but watch as he starts the rep. The first thing that happens when he actually starts the descent, you're going to see this like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a real aggressive, like flaring, like he's like everything kind of snaps right as he goes. So let's see if I can articulate this. So he's tight at the top. You go back. So there, he just got real tight, okay? So all he needs to do from this position is just lean over, okay? So everything is where it needs to be. He could have the chest arched up a little more, right? His back's a little bit round. So when he took that breath and got tight, I would have liked to see a little bit more, right? Set that back in extension right there. What he's gonna do is he's gonna try and set his back in extension as he's lowering the weight, okay? So you'll see this, see that? I'll give you a little bit more of a heads up. So he's gonna take a breath and tighten, and then as he starts the rep, he's gonna flare he's gonna tilt his pelvis back. So he's gonna contract his lower back muscles, right? And flare his chest up. He's basically gonna set his spine in extension as he's going down. So ready, there, right? So everything as he's starting the rep, you know, and initiating the movement, the first thing is this, okay? Now, you don't want to do that while you're moving the bar. You want to do that before you're moving the bar, because any type of jerking or contraction like that while you're actually moving the weight is gonna mess with the bar path. It's gonna change, it's gonna introduce all this unnecessary movement that is it'll mess with your balance. You know, if you flare up too hard, the bar might roll down your back, or you might kick it forward to the midfoot. There could be all these, it's too many variables that you're introducing with this like dynamic back extension at the same time that you're starting the lift. So the right way to do this is do that. If you need to extend your back and get it tight, let me see if I can catch the position and I'll show you what I mean. Yeah. So you went from here to here, but you did it. You can see that your knees you did it as you're going down. So if you want this, which is a nice, you know, extended tight back position, right? We got a little arch in the back here. Do that before you start the rep. Do that when you take your breath. Okay. So that way you're locked in, right? It's like you don't set your back in the deadlift as you're picking the weight up off the ground. You set your back and then you you lock it tight and then you pick the weight up off the ground. Because if you try and pick the bar up and set your back at the same time, the bar is going to swing off your legs. So instead you extend your back, you pause, and then you move the bar in a straight line. It's kind of the inverse here, but you want to, in that moment where you kind of took your breath and set yourself, you left out the part where you do that, where you extend, where you puff your chest up and set your back in a nice rigid extension. So take your breath, lock the back here, pause for a second, make sure you're tight, and then all you have to do is break the hips and knees, right? So again, that back segment, everything from your head to your hip, this whole segment is just rigid. And then all you're doing is hinging over, all the back does is go from vertical to horizontal, but it doesn't deform, right? Because that's just unnecessary movement of the spine that could either be a power leak or it could throw off the movement in general, right? As you flare your chest up and lift your head a little bit, right? So instead, lock it first and then just lean over as you squat, and the whole thing will be much more efficient. You'll have less slop and a better transfer of force. So let's see if we can catch anything else. I mean, that's a good, at the bottom, I mean, that's beautiful. Your chest is up, your back is tight. Like, it's very nice. And the depth looks pretty good here. I just want you to set that arch before you move the bar. Simply put, hip drive is good. Let me see. See, yeah, you're starting this with this aggressive lower back, pelvic, anterior pelvic tilt thing, right? Which is fine because it looks good down here, but it just needs to happen sooner. Now you can see here that your knees are starting to cave in, right? So I would think, and I mean, you're lifting what's heavy for you, so it's understandable. Oh man, I think your toe turned out. Yeah, okay. So watch this. This is cool. So watch this foot right here. Okay, when I hit play, you're gonna see that toe just shoot out. Keep your eyes on that toe. See that? Just shot out like that. Well, that tells me that your toe angle wasn't correct. Okay, because in order for you to shove your knees out, you had to turn that toe more to allow the knee to travel out. And even in this position here, this knee right here needs to come out more that way. Okay? They've sort of caved in on the way down. And this is the battle in the squat is jacking the knees out real hard. But that keeping the knees out as wide as possible at the bottom is where you're going to get more of a rebound. So let's check and see what that rebound looks like. See how the bounce is doing. Yeah, that whole jerky thing just screwed up this is not a very yeah. So knees are caving in. So I suspect that you probably need to, it's kind of hard to tell from here, but I would think that you might need to narrow your stance a little bit, or at least leave your toes where they are and turn your heels in more. So you want your toe angle to be, 30 to 40 degrees, okay? And if they're too far forward, you're going to have a hard time getting your knees out. And then as we saw, as you shoved your knee out, the foot had to rotate with it, which is that's not what we want. So, but even here, like if I walked up to you, or maybe I'll go down to the bottom here and pause it. Yeah, they're caving in on the way up. It's, understandable with heavier weight, but they actually look pretty out here at the bottom. Let's watch the next one. Yeah, they're just moving in a little bit. And let me see if your head position changes and we get out of the hips here. No, hip drive's pretty good here. So overall, I would play around with that bottom position and really practice, like maybe throw some pause squats in there so you can feel that correct bottom position on your lighter day. And I think your stance might be a little too wide. So I think maybe narrowing your stance a little bit, turning the toes out a little bit more, and then really focusing on getting the knees out harder and keeping them out on the way up. That's the trick, right? So it's one thing to shove them out on the way down. It's a whole nother thing as you're driving up to not let them cave in. Because if they cave in on the way up, then your hips are going to scoot back and you're going to get this circular thing that we've seen in other videos, right? The knees cave in, and instead of the hips going straight up, they go back and up, right? And that's kind of happening here. You can see your hips kind of move back and up. We want the hips to move up in a straight line. And so you have to not only shove the knees out real hard at the bottom, but you have to keep them out on the way up. And it's challenging, right? Because you got a lot to think about. So this is something you're going to have to practice on your lighter days, right? Try doing some pause squats with lighter weight. Go down, pause for 3 seconds, keep the knees jacked out real hard. As you drive up, after a 3-second pause, keep your eyes on the ground, like straight down, and watch your knees out of your peripheral vision. If as you start driving up, you see them pull in out of the corner of your eye, you see your knees move in, you make them go back out with your brain, okay? Go back up, try that again. In fact, on a lot of your reps, it may help to move your eye gaze closer to your toes because it gives you a better shot of seeing the knee change. And for you, it's right as you start driving up. You want to watch those knees. You see them move in, you shove them back out. And with time and practice, you'll develop that connection in your brain that allows you to just keep them out. But it takes time. Okay, so I would like to see, if possible, maybe next week or something, a lighter set, not something, maybe a volume day version of your squat if you're still doing that. so we can see how you deal, what your form looks like with a more manageable weight. This is a, like 2 rep max. So there's some wiggle room with your technique. So overall, there's a few things to work on. It's pretty good. Let's dial it in and let's see a lighter version and see if we can dial that in, or how many of the errors that happen on a real heavy set are present in a more moderate set. Okay. Thanks for submitting. Always good to, check out new people, and good luck. We'll see you again soon. Okay, looks like we got through everybody for this week, so that means it is time for our new segment, Unsolicited Fitness Celebrity Form Check. So you guys are gonna submit people, influencers on the internet, fitness celebrities, whatever, and we're gonna take a look at their form and just see how they're doing. Maybe we can help them, maybe it's perfect, who knows. This week, I decided to pick my man, Mike Matthews. So let's take a look at Mike Matthews. So Mike Matthews, love Mike. He is the author of Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and a bunch of other books. Fantastic book. And Legion Athletics. He's got a supplement line, puts up a lot of great content. And and just look at the dude. Oh, see, can I put my face over that body? Let me see if that works. Oh, nope. Okay. There's just we'll do this. Okay. If I go tiny me, there we go. Just like Mike. All right. So we're going to take a look. I follow Mike on Instagram and I've seen his, lifts before. So I picked, he has a deadlift in here and I thought we'd just take a look at that. So let's see. I've got the Mike Matthews. Now, just so I could pause it and rewind it, I actually did a little screen recording of it. And so here we go. So let's check out Mike's deadlift and see if there's anything we can offer in terms of advice. All right. So we'll watch a couple of these, just get a feel for it. And then I think this is a set of 7. Okay. So let's look at this little jerking thing that he's doing. You see that where he gets tight and then there's like a yanking of the bar off the ground. Okay, so we'll talk about that. But first, let's look at his setup position. So you can see right here that his toes are kind of pointed forward, right? There's not much of an angle here. So we usually want about 15 degrees or so, but his toes look pretty straight ahead. And you can see he's got a lot of pressure on the outsides of his feet because of that, because the toes actually want to be out a little bit more. And then you can see that his grip, like his leg is actually, or his knees are actually sort of caving inwards, right? Which means that the stance is a little bit too wide for the deadlift and the toes are pointed too straight ahead. So if we bring the feet about 6 to 8 inches between the heels and then turn the feet out a little more or the toes out a little more, what that's going to allow is right now the knees are kind of at an inward angle. It's going to allow the opposite. So if we bring the heels in and angle the toes out a little bit, now he can push his knees outward. And when we do that, you're going to bring more of the adductor muscle into the lift, right? These groin muscles, just like the squat. When you shove your knees out in the squat, you're going to tighten up those adductors and bring them into the lift. If you go to the bottom of the squat and you let your knees cave in, the reason they cave in is because you slack the adductor muscles and now they're not in the lift anymore and they can't help you get up. If you keep them out and stretched and tight, they can help. Same concept here. If we bring Mike's feet in a little bit, turn the toes out and jack the knees out into his elbows, like push out a little bit more, right? Like that. Now he's going to have the adduct, he's going to feel a little bit more tension in the groin, and that's more muscle mass. And the more muscle mass we can incorporate into the lift, the more weight we can lift, right? So very simple fix would be just turning the heels in, narrowing the stance, and thinking about, rather than having the knees pointed this way, out like that. And we'll bring in those adductors and it'll be a much better, he'll have more power. He'll feel it. Okay, because right now we're kind of leaving those out of the lift. So let's see how the actual lifting looks. Yeah, all right, so let's talk about that Oh, well, we'll talk about the top position. So here you can see how he finishes the rep. He's still kind of like, knees are a little soft and and his hips aren't fully locked out. So he'd probably get flagged for this in a powerlifting meet. You know, he's doing a set of 7. So like, just get through the set. But if we're nitpicking, you want those knees fully locked and a little bit, very slight lean back at the top to show that you've fully locked out the hips and the knee joint. Okay. So, but let's talk about the big deal here, which is that jerk. Okay. So you'll see he pulls the bar back and then he squeezes his chest up to get his back set in extension, which is great. And then, but when he picks it up off the ground, there's this other jerking motion. He kind of snaps tight, and then there's that jerk. Okay, and now watch his low back when he does that. Okay, so what that means is that he was not as tight as he could have been before picking the bar up off the ground. So remember in the last video last week, I talked about the deadlift is an ever increasing amount of tension, right? So as you progress from standing straight up with 0 tension to reaching down and grabbing the bar, dropping your shins to the bar, squeezing your chest up, all of those steps create more tension throughout the whole body until you are at maximum tension, and then you just rip the bar off the ground. So we're going from 0 tension to like max tension, okay? Now, here's the deal. Imagine that I'm towing a car, right? So I've got a chain hooked from the back of my car to the front of someone else's car. And that chain is just lying loose on the ground in a pile, right? Now, let's say I decide to just floor it. I'm gonna tow the car, I just hit the gas, and that chain that's loose on the ground just snaps into tension. That's not gonna be good for anybody's car. It's either gonna pull something off mine or rip the fender off of his, right? That's not how you wanna do it. The right way to do it is, once we get the cars hooked up, I ease my car forward until there's tension on that chain, till that chain is taut, right? And then with tension, I ease the cars forward, right? That's the right way to do it. So in this analogy or in the deadlift, these are the chains, right? Your arms are the chains that connect you to the bar. And you don't want to have loose chains and then all of a sudden have them snap into tension as you try and pick the weight up off the ground. Because what that's going to do is that yanking motion is going to pull your back out of extension. So you're doing all this hard work to set your back real hard before you pick the bar up off the ground. And then any jerking motion, usually it's bent elbows. Mike doesn't seem to have bent elbows, right? So a lot of times you'll see lifters kind of cock their elbows and then try and yank the bar off the ground. And when the bar pulls forward like that and the elbow snaps into tension, it's too much force for their back to hold, and they just round their back real quick. Now, in Mike's case, it just means that he's got his elbows straight, which is correct, right? His arms are locked. The problem is when he sets his back, there's another little step that he's missing, and that is to pull up on the bar a little bit, right? So the elbows are straight, locked, but when you squeeze your chest up, you're also gonna lift up on the bar just a little bit. We call it pulling the slack out of the bar. And it's just a little bit of hip extension, right? Just lifting the chest a little bit so that that bar is, a lot of people say, make the bar feel heavy in your hands. It's almost like you're trying to pick the bar up off the ground, right? Just a little bit. Like you're not putting so much force that it actually the plates leave the ground, but you're just lifting up a little bit so that you pull all that slack out of the arms, right? So that as soon as you actually start the rep, and the rep starts by pushing with the legs, right? It's knee extension to get that thing off the floor. You're using your quads. So if you have full tension in the arms, right? From the arms to the bar, that chain is tight. Then as soon as you start pushing with the legs, the plates will come up off the ground. And that's an efficient lift. In Mike's case, it looks like he's doing a good job setting his back, but there's still a little bit of slack, right, in the arms. It's not from a bent elbow. It's just that he didn't lift his chest up just a little bit to fully get that slack out of the bar. And so when he goes to start the lift, there's this momentary snapping, that final little bit of tension that he needed snaps into place, and that's why you see that jerking motion. And the reason that that's a problem is because as he finishes putting that tension on the arms, pulling the slack out of the bar, that jerking motion is pulling his back out of extension. So it's just gonna go from this beautiful set position that he has to a little soft, right? And then the rest of the rep, he's fighting to prevent his back from rounding more than he would have if he had locked it tight, right? Pulled all the slack out of the bar, created that tension, and then just smoothly lifted the bar off the ground with his legs. So if we watch his low back tight, and then as he jerks, it's very subtle, like he's doing, I mean, he's got a good deadlift. It's just, it softens just a little bit, right? And if he had this form at, I mean, I think he pulls 7 reps here. If he had this form with, let's say, you know, of like a max deadlift, that back, that subtle unlocking of the back is going to turn into like a turtle problem, right? And then we have a very inefficient transfer of force because as he's trying to pick the bar up off the ground, his spine's rounding, right? Instead of being rigid and efficiently transferring that force from the legs to the bar. So I don't have a video of a real heavy deadlift for Mike, but I would imagine, I mean, in my experience working with clients, when you get that jerking thing happening at really heavy weights, it gets real bad. So he's managed to pull it off. Those are my corrections. And let's just watch him finish the set here. Oh no, he dropped it. All right, wait a minute. Oh, Mike. Okay, guys, don't drop the bar, okay? That is like a huge, just gym faux pas. You do not just drop the bar at the end of a set, right? You picked it up, you put it back down. Even if they're bumper plates, it doesn't matter. That's the down part, the descent, right? The eccentric part of the lift in the deadlift is part of the lift, right? Just huge air. I mean, you just don't, you don't just stand up and let the bar go with flair at the end of the rep. So Mike, come on. You know better. You know better than that, man. Anyway, thanks for being a good sport, Mike. If you happen to see this, a lot of good stuff to talk about, and keep doing what you're doing, brother. Really like it. Again, Mike Matthews, bigger, leaner, stronger. And that is it, guys, for this week. Thank you for tuning in and submitting your videos. As always, super fun, and we'll do it all again next week. This one went longer than normal, but work on the stuff that we talked about. Keep the videos coming, and I appreciate all the support. We'll see you guys next time.